Well, welcome everybody to Justin's Room, Our Stories to Tell. That happens every third Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Info on future and past events, registration, playlist, and donation opportunity is available at bit.ly/Justin's-room, J and R capitalized. Register at bit.ly/register Justin. Register and Justin are capitalized. Elaine wants Anita to know that she's also on the call. Elaine Kolb is also with us tonight. On the slide is an illustration of Justin. It's a line drawing of him wearing his signature hat, his glasses down his nose, and his bolo tie, and it was based on a photo by Tom Olin and drawn by Teddy. Next slide. Justin's Room, Our Stories to Tell. Justin Dart and his wife Yoshiko took a road trip multiple times across the country, sitting with disabled people in every state to hear their challenges, successes, and hopes. They brought these powerful stories to Congress, helping to turn shared dreams into the Americans with Disabilities Act. Bring your words, your poems, your art, your dance, your music or video, whatever feels right for you. Other people that are participating, we keep that to about 8 minutes. Anita, you are free to continue as long as people are wanting to discuss. If you want to share, let us know ahead of time or just come and join the Zoom. The mic will stay open as long as folks have something to say. Every story is welcome. Email leadon, capital L-O, at iloveyou-leadon.com. I-L-Y-L-O are hyphenated with any questions. Info on future and past events, registration, playlist, and donation opportunity is available at bit.ly/Justin's-room, capital J and R. We have a QR code on the screen, and the signature illustration of Justin is up in the corner that is based on the photo by Tom Olin, drawn by Teddy. Next slide. Justin's Room, Our Stories to Tell, again, every third Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Today is June 17th, 2026. This month, we are going to hear stories about Diane Coleman and community supports. Our featured speaker is Anita Cameron, but we'll also take anyone else's stories on the call as well. Info on future and past events again, although all the information is at bit.ly/Justin's-room, and you can register for upcoming events for Justin's Room at bit.ly/register Justin. R and J are capitalized, and there is a QR code on the screen. Next slide. This event is not to be recorded. This live session is being recorded by DHACC and I Love You Lead On for registered participants and those in our community. It will be shared directly with you. Please do not record, copy, or share this event yourself. If you see this recording anywhere other than our official emails or website or on our own YouTube channel, it has been shared without our permission. Next slide. Contact us for help or accessibility requests. If you need help accessing the event or want to request a voice option during the presentation, email us at leadon@iloveyou-leadon.com. L and O are capitalized. I, L, Y, L, and O are capitalized. Zoom etiquette and access. During the presentation, all Zoom attendees will be muted to support access and reduce background noise. If you need to use voice to communicate during the presentation, email us and we'll arrange a separate voice space just for that. After the presentation ends, we'll open up mics for conversation, unrecorded, one voice at a time as usual. Chat comments will be read aloud to provide access. If you don't want chat read aloud, you can use a private message to one of the hosts. And Elaine's asking about using the BIT links. Elaine, we can work out something with you and get that information to you. ASL is provided for the presentation and will be spotlighted. Auto captions are available and can be viewed on the screen or as a transcript. In the Zoom toolbar, there is a CC option. If it is not there, click the three dots for more options and locate it there. The ability to show, hide, or adjust captions is there, as well as the option to view captions as a transcript. And if you need help with that, it's not on the slide, just message us in the chat. A note about our ASL interpreter. In keeping with I Love You Lead On and DHACC's goal of making conversations about disability available and accessible to all, we invite our ASL interpreter to participate fully, asking questions and joining the discussion if and when they have them. Next slide. Justin's Room sessions are recorded. All Justin's Room sessions are recorded and will be available on our playlist within a few days with corrected captions and transcripts. You can find the playlist on the Justin's Room website at bit.ly/Justin's-Room. And we'll be putting these links into the chat if that helps access this better. You can link directly. Next slide. Help make this space accessible. I Love You Lead On community and all of its various projects are volunteer-led. We have a variety of ways you can support our efforts to provide full access. Our work includes the Disability History Culture Collective, DHACC, this space, Dev's Room, Judy's Room, Justin's Room, and other events on the horizon. And you can donate at iloveyou-leadon.com/donate. I-L-Y-L and O are capitalized. Next slide. Content trigger warning. Tonight's presentation discusses material that may be distressing to some viewers. Discretion is advised. It includes some references to assisted suicide. Next slide. Join our email groups. Disability History and Culture Collective, DHACC, has 2 Google groups for disability-related conversations. DHACC Disability Museum, focused on museums, exhibits, and collections, formal, informal, or in progress, and Disability Advocates Lead On for general disability community discussions, events, resources, and current issues. You may choose one or both, depending on your interests. For instructions and more information, visit https://bit.ly/DHACC, all caps, hyphen Google Groups. Both Google and Groups have capital G. Next slide. Have an idea for a future Justin's Room? Let us know your ideas. Email leadon@iloveyouleadon.com, -leadon.com. Lead On has capital L-O. I Love You Lead On, I-L-Y-L-O are capitalized. Next slide.
So tonight, I'm really pleased to have Anita with us. This is Anita Cameron, who worked with Diane Coleman for a lot of years with Not Dead Yet, doing minority outreach, and was part of ADAPT for an even longer period of time. She has her own business that is remembering the fact that those that are minorities have been part of the movement since the beginning. There have always been folks in the BIPOC population that have been a part of us. They've been important and integral to everything we've done. And Anita's making sure that they are remembered. And she's got insider stories and she's got stories from the past. And I'm really glad she's able to come because she's one of our important elders at this point. We're getting fewer and fewer, and I'm glad she's here. Thank you, Anita.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Can y'all hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, okay. Hi, I'm Anita. Quick visual description, Black person with kind of medium tone, brown skin, um, long locks, black headphones, and I'm not sure why we're not getting much light here. I'm actually moving the light closer so you can see me better. Coming to you from Rochester. Oh wow. So where do I begin? Oh, first, hey Elaine. Um, glad you're here.
Oh,
Um,
honey, once I knew you were going to be here, I had to come, even though my brain isn't working.
well, I'm glad that you came. And wow, Diane. Well, I met Diane actually. I met Diane in jail. Yeah, it was about 1989. Um, at that time, ADAPT, Diane and I were both ADAPT members. And I think Diane, um, we came to ADAPT about the same time. I think Diane came a couple of years before me. So when I met Diane, I was a newbie in ADAPT. Um, I was um, one of those quiet, uh, very quiet, soft-spoken, folks kind of looking around, at everyone um, with awe. And so when ADAPT started, we did transportation. So in fact, we were ADAPT was an acronym, and it stood for American Disabled for Accessible Public Transit. And we used to follow the American Public Transit Association, APTA, and to an extent, the Urban Mass Transit Association, UMTA. But we would travel around the country and sometimes into Canada and, you know, protest their conventions uh, because we were trying to get lifts on buses. And we were trying to get on their agenda to tell them the importance of lifts on buses. And so one year they had their convention at some kind of famous, I can't even remember it right now, some kind of famous casino. And we were there and we kept hitting them and kept hitting them. And we got arrested several times. And I believe about the third arrest, we wound ourselves up in court and we were sentenced to 3 days in the Washoe County Jail. The jail was oddly, it was accessible. I think this was a new jail. It was accessible. In we were placed in general population, and we didn't get into because there was so many of us and the process was so long. We didn't actually get into our cells until very late in the evening. And so when we woke up that next morning, it was a big surprise for some of our fellow inmates and all. And I was kind of going around, seeing who amongst us was there. And there are a lot of ADAPT members that I didn't really know because, like I said, I was new. um, and people were talking to Diane, and Diane was sitting at one of those tables, and I, very shyly, walked up to her and sat down and introduced myself and said I was Anita and that I was from Chicago. And you know, Dennis Schreiber, yeah, that's the guy I work with. Um, and so we talked a bit, but Diane got sick. They actually sent her to the hospital. Um, so I didn't see Diane until after, we got out of jail. That was the action that actually changed me into the loudmouth Anita that people know now. Um, and so, when I would see Diane, over the years, we became friends, and she became a mentor to me. And Diane was literally the first disabled lawyer that I had ever met. Because you have to understand that although I was born with disabilities, I was not raised around disability. Even like with school and whatnot, I was mainstreamed in school. I was never around anyone disabled, until I rather accidentally found ADAPT. Um, and I started out in Chicago, and I met Wade Blank and decided to move to Colorado to work directly, you know, with do community organizing. I got hired um, at Atlanta, and that was, yeah, kind of my job. And so, as I said, over the years, Diane and I, became friends. And in the 90s, there was the case of Jack Kevorkian, going around with his suicide machine, hoping people, largely women, I think the vast majority of his victims were women. Um, and in the wake of all of that was how Not Dead Yet, got started. Um, and, Not Dead Yet, we worked, eventually on issues of, assisted suicide, medical rationing, because Diane was like doing like a whole bunch of things. Like it was like obscure sometimes things that we didn't think of, like say for instance, quality adjusted um, life years, um, called Qualities, and it's a system where it's a system that definitely is not for disabled. And it's like, for instance, the medications that will cure a condition are cheap, but the medications that will maintain conditions, or control conditions are often very expensive. Um, and that goes also like for some of the treatments and whatnot. Doctors factor in quality adjusted life years. Um, and it's basically, it's Diane was much, much, much more well versed in that. But basically, I saw it as it's a system of discrimination that discriminates against you in the medical field, based on disability and your projected, life, and all of that, and quality of life, and all of that. So in 1996, um, Not Dead Yet was founded by Diane and a couple of other people. Actually, Bob Kafka gave Not Dead Yet its name from the Benny Hill, or some British comedy. But so I worked kind of, with Diane on that when we had a case before the Supreme Court. I traveled and went with that. And like I said, slowly, over the years, like um Diane and I got close. I was in 2009, I had a situation where it was determined to be terminal. And I, Diane kind of helped me and guided me in this because she was in Washington State. They had just enacted their assisted suicide law. My mom was placed in hospice, and the doctors began kind of very subtly softening my mom up, to offer her assisted suicide. They did everything but outright say the words. And my mom was the first person who had been in hospice for longer than a, a couple of days or a week or something like that. I mean, my mom was in hospice for 6 months, and the doctors had her, convinced that her body was dying. They were saying, your body's in the process of dying. That's what they told her. That's what they told me. My mom decided that she um, didn't want to die in Washington State. She wanted to go home to Colorado to die. And so from New York, myself, got together with the folks in Denver at Atlantis, and we got my mom, her own place, set her up with attendant services and nursing care. And basically, my mom moved back and she just basically kind of waited to die. Um, she had a bucket list of things that she wanted to do. And one of those was to get arrested with her kid in Washington, D.C. on an adapt accident. So 6 weeks after she came home to die, she was in Washington, D.C. with me, getting arrested with adapt, fighting for disability rights and justice. And at that point, she decided um, that she was not dying, and she didn't. And she did pass away on February 1st, 2021, 12 years after I got the frantic call from the doctor. And, I told, my mom's story a lot because, assisted suicide, you're supposed to be deemed terminal, 6 months or less to live. And, doctors often make mistakes. And my mom's case showed that. So I started like writing for, not necessarily for Not Dead Yet. I had this blog. I've been blogging since 2004, and I had this blog, and I would write, because I was passionately against suicide anyway. And so I would write articles, on that. I would write articles about why Black people shouldn't, embrace suicide and whatnot. And I didn't realize until she told me, but Diane lurked my social media, every social media I had. Um, she lurked, and then she would say, hey, I saw that article you wrote. Can I post it to Not Dead Yet? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So, I wound up serving on the board of Not Dead Yet. And then when I returned to Rochester, Diane offered me the position, um, director of minority outreach for Not Dead Yet, because she realized that, you know, healthcare disparities, you know, there are disability healthcare disparities, there are racial disparities in healthcare that could put communities of color in danger, um, from assisted suicide. That even though that was something that communities of color, it was kind of rare, but that the compassionate choices and other groups out there were really getting the word out. They had way more money and all. And so, you know, um, that's how that was. And so we, Not Dead Yet was, originally it was like Adapt. It was a direct action organization. And Diane, Diane was, can I say it? Diane was badass. Um, you know, and she got arrested she was arrested many times. Often Diane and I were arrested together. Um, and she had that, commitment, and all, you know, for freeing our people, making sure that, disabled people, we had access, and all. Diane was at the Capitol crawl. She could not get out of her wheelchair to crawl those steps, but she was there. And, it, I don't, eh, Diane and I, we ended up becoming very close. Diane actually, I got married in Canada, um, because at that time, um, same-sex marriage equality, was not legal here in the United States. And so my wife and I went to Canada to get married, and we actually had an adapt wedding. And Diane came to Canada, um, and sang at my wedding. She was my, you know, matron of honor, if you will, and sang at my wedding. Um, we got married in a little chapel in Canada, and it was an adapt wedding. So we made we decorated the chapel walls with signs and things of that nature. The entire wedding party had on adapt gear, and it was really great. We sang adapt stuff, and Diane sang at my wedding, um, and it was really it was so easy to work with Diane at Not Dead Yet because we aligned so closely, with um, with the way we saw things, with the way we moved, with a number of things. Although she was always very, very willing to hear me. To I felt like Diane, John, and we were a team at Not Dead Yet. And although she was, CEO, and she was the boss, we, got, we were treated as equals, which as somebody Black was so, so important to me. And one of the last conversations that I had with Diane before she passed, I was telling her about the concept of disability justice and the principles of disability justice, and how I felt that, Not Dead Yet, that we needed to re kind of realign ourselves and frame and do our work from a disability justice framework. And Diane was so, you know, that was something that she wanted. She was so, excited to hear, and and all of that. And I was writing at the time that she passed away. I was kind of writing, a article, treatise, of sorts about, you know, uh, disability justice and how Not Dead Yet, could adopt, this, and go forth, but, unfortunately, Diane passed away, and that was, the loss of Diane was, I mean, a huge, huge, you know, huge loss because, especially in the fight against assisted suicide, such a warrior and, fountain of wisdom and knowledge that, obviously no way I could even begin to fill her shoes or her wheels. Um, but suffice, to say that, I mean, I adored me some Diane, and you know, the world is a much safer, if you will, space for Diane, because Diane, in the situation with this assisted suicide, and we ran into issues like medical rationing, like when COVID came and people were having their equipment taken from them and all. It was Diane who got together with a group of lawyers who got that MOU, got that you could not snatch someone else's, you know, um, vents and other materials and give it to someone else, because, you know, they wrote you off and whatnot. And so there was so many other, things that Diane, like that she did that, that touched on, all in that realm of, healthcare and health disparities. I think that the health world is safer for, because Diane lived and did that work. I am going to stop here, and if anybody have any questions or anything for me, yeah.
Anita, must have been wonderful to have been to an ADAPT action with your mom. I can't imagine that. What did your mom think of ADAPT? What was that experience like for you?
Oh, well, my mom was a fierce fan of ADAPT. She had gotten arrested a couple of times locally. She had just never been on a national action. And she actually got to go on two national actions. She went on one other action after that action, when she got out of hospice. And yet she was a fierce adapter. And the last conversation that we had before she died, she was, um, talking about, adapt, and the fight. My mom used to always say that, I was a national treasure, and she knew Diane. Um, she knew Diane and loved her. And so, yeah.
Anyone have any stories to share about Diane?
There's a couple things in the chat. Elaine has written, many of the women who were not even sick, in response to what you were saying, Anita, about Kevorkian, only depressed and
Yeah.
mistreated. She said Diane had a beautiful voice. I had the
She
privilege of
did.
singing with her in Nashville at the Alliance for
Like,
Technology Access Institute in the 90s, and that's when I first met her. Diane is the only one besides myself who recorded our song "We Will Ride," and Elaine says I wrote the original version of "Not Dead Yet" on October 5th, 1996, adding 2 more verses in 2013.
Diane had a gorgeous voice. As a matter of fact, um, so Elaine and Diane were the two singers, if you will, for DAP, and they recorded. Now I sang a lot, but I was a ham. Okay, there was no way I was even gonna began to even think. I was just a ham. I did it to keep the spirits up, and keep them pumped up and whatnot. But oh my God, Diane, and I actually have in my music, recordings with Diane, with Elaine, with Wynell Carter. So yeah, Diane had a lovely, lovely, lovely voice. And she was into Star Trek. And Diane was yeah, she was in Star Trek. She had a gorgeous voice. She was a cat lover. She had a gorgeous kitty. Um, yeah, it was. She had that humor. Um, and but she could be fierce too. Diane, she wasn't gonna take no mess off of nobody. You know, um, she could do it in a lot calmer manner than I could. But oh yeah, you didn't. You know, Diane wasn't about to let you play up in her face. Anyone else? Uh,
So Diane and I spent a lot of time together in Michigan. She's originally from Michigan,
yep.
and so she'd come back a lot. And Kevorkian was obviously in Michigan,
Yeah.
and so we had a lot of actions around Kevorkian. Um, some of them, were really funny. I mean, I'm not sure who sort of created the actions, but we had one where we had somebody with a toe tag on them. They were on a gurney, and they were dressed up like they were dead, like they were dead, and had the toe tags you put on a body in the morgue, in front of the governor's offices, or governor's house, I think it was, that we put that, and that hit all the newspapers. I mean, that was civil disobedience at its finest, because you
Oh
could
yeah.
not talk. Some of what ADAPT does is it's people making good trouble, but it is trouble. This was something where you had to talk about it. It was so ridiculous, and it created so much news because we did this crazy thing, and it really was brilliant.
I mean, Diane had, she had a brilliant mind, and I think a lot of times, I would in my relationships and whatnot bump up against uneven and unequal power dynamics or other dynamics that I was on the losing end of. And, it wasn't like that working with Diane at Not Dead Yet. You know, she she saw me as an equal partner, and sometimes would, you know, come and ask my thoughts, on different things. I'm always, would want to know, well, what do you feel about this, or how do you think, or what do you think, you know, um, should proceed, or whatnot. Like I said, she totally involved it wasn't like a boss subordinate relationship. We were equal in this, equal, in that, the only thing was, I mean, yeah, she was the boss, but how do I put it? I mean, I did not feel as if I was her underling or subordinate. And so, working with Diane was just, it was, for lack of better words, a blessing, a treasure. It was just, and I, obviously learned you know, terribly a lot. And there was just the way, I think that Diane had far, 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 far more confidence in me than I had in myself. And that was reflected, you know, in that. And, we just last Thursday, the 11th, we, not Patients' Rights um, Action Fund and Not Dead Yet, and several other organizations um, announced the filing of a court case in New York and in Illinois to stay implementation of our assisted suicide laws. Um, Illinois and New York were the 12th and 13th states to adopt the suicide laws, and um, ours goes into effect August 5th, and Illinois goes into effect sometime in September. And so we put, forth that case filed to stay the implementation and to roll back. We are hoping, expecting, especially in the case of New York, that our case will go to the U.S. Supreme Court. New York is especially egregious because the governor has slashed disability programs, home health programs, totally wrecked the eligibility system, restructured our consumer directed assistant programs, to the point where 700 fiscal intermediaries are one, and now you have hundreds of thousands of disabled New Yorkers who can't get access to care. And then we passed assisted suicide. And so Not Dead Yet is an organizational plaintiff. And in New York, I am one of two individual plaintiffs, because in my situation, basically I am terminal, because I did lose access to my medications, lost my insurance, was denied home health care by the state of New York, specifically because they totally rewrote the eligibility and made it so that you basically can't get on. If you can roll over in your bed and transfer from your wheelchair to a toilet, yeah, you don't get attendant services in New York, even though you might need them. And unfortunately for me, I just gotten out of a nursing home, and I was denied that. So, and then lost my insurance. So I'm one of those that when the law takes effect, yes, I will be eligible for assisted suicide. And my fear is because of the coercive nature of doctors and things of that nature, you know, if I wind myself up in hospital, especially, um, you know, things could happen. And, and I live in Rochester. Man, Rochester is like literally hop, skip, and a jump from Canada. We talking can Rochester, Canada in less than an hour. And in Canada, their situation is so out of control that you don't have to be terminal. They are offering it for people with mental health disabilities. They're trying to get it for people under the age of 18, so-called mature minors as young as 12. Um, since their assisted suicide, euthanasia, because theirs is euthanasia because here in the United States, you have to adjust the medication. Whereas in Canada, the medication is given to you via lethal injection by a doctor. And in Canada, people are dying because they cannot afford the disability tax living in poverty while disabled. They get euthanized because they cannot find safe, affordable housing. They get euthanized because they cannot find attendant services. Canada has the most permissive assisted suicide laws on the planet, and they're trying to bring them here. And so Diane, you know, would be jumping for joy that we have a court case. That was her dream. Diane, you know, when we had the court case in California, Diane helped, um, deal with that. I had involvement with that. Our court case in Colorado, and then she passed away. So to know, I'm I'm I am so glad that Diane did not live to see us get assisted suicide here in New York, but that we have it and we have a court case. Diane would be so happy. So yeah.
Elaine, you wanted to jump in?
Yes. Anita,
Hey Elaine,
I adore you.
I adore you.
Woohoo! I will try very hard to stay calm and focused so I can speak, because I have had a traumatic brain injury. And sometimes I can't even talk. And processing what others say is not easy. And so I am very, very thankful. Some of you here know who I am, and some of us have not met in person yet. And yet, I'm not dead yet. So there. And Susan, I adore you too.
Feeling as mutual.
We have been in the same struggle now for many, many years, and have had different times that we have been together. And same with you, Anita, and same with Diane. And so that's why, and also Justin and Yoshiko and all them, and Wade Blank. I'm so glad you said Wade Blank's name, because a lot of people think they know ADAPT. They don't know Wade Blank.
They don't.
Hello.
Who marched with Dr. King on Bloody Sunday.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that.
Well,
it's definitely a mentor and second dad to me, and Diane was, a mentor, and certainly, like a big sister, to me, and I miss Diane, and I miss the work. It seems like the people, most of the people, you know, fighting against assisted suicide. Marilyn Golden, she's gone. Lily Beth and Lonnie Van Hook, and Diane's gone, and John Kelly is gone, and I think I'm the only one left of the original crew. Not dead yet. Fighters, against assisted suicide. It's pretty much us
well,
left.
I wrote the song on October 5th, 1996. Come on.
Exactly. That's what I was saying.
You and me, we in it together, kiddo. And Susan, I remember you from way back too with ADAPT. Way back. So I know we're almost ready to let the sign language interpreter take a break. Bless you, dear, because you are a blessing. And I want each of you and all of you to take a deep breath. And acknowledge that we, each and all of us, are in this together. Which, by the way, is another one of my songs. I'm one of the best songwriters most of you have never heard of, because I can't have any money. And my work is not commercial. However, money can be made. I offer everything for free, as long as it's used to free all people, everyone. Disability justice is interracial, multicultural, intergenerational, gender fluid, with cross disability solidarity. We include everyone, because we are everyone, which is another one of my songs, by the way, and the title of my only recorded CD. We are everyone. Anyway, so I think we need to take a break or whatever. It's about that time, right?
This is Alice. Yes.
I think so. Let's see. What time is it?
Hey,
yes, you're very good.
Late for me.
8:01.
When we come back, Laura has a couple of questions and some things she wants to ask in the chat. So we'll come back in 10 minutes and start up there.
Okay.
So I think Susan answered Laura's question about the governor. Did that answer your question, Laura? who was governor
Yes,
in Michigan?
Angler. Yep, John
Yeah,
Angler. I remember
yeah,
him. I
yeah,
was curious if it was him or another one. So good
yeah.
to know.
I did not know about him, and I looked him up. He apparently is the reason that Michigan does not have assisted suicide. So,
Hmm, interesting.
Yeah, it's
Was he the
actually
governor with the twins? Does he have children? Yeah, there
yeah,
was
yeah.
an adapt action in Michigan um, back in the 90s. Yeah, I'm having flashbacks to that. Yeah, I believe that he was governor.
Yeah, Michigan probably doesn't have assisted suicide, in, not not in large, probably half and half. It's the disability community, but the other is Michigan has a very conservative Christian community, and they are very much against assisted suicide. And that's actually one of my fondest memories that I have of Diane. I went to Princeton to protest against Peter Singer. And in the event you don't know who Peter Singer is, he's an Australian who is an activist for the rights of pets. And his belief is that if you give birth to a child and during the first 29 days of that child's life, you are not happy with that child, you should be allowed to euthanize them. That we have no obligation to keep our children alive if they don't bring us pleasure, because we could always have another one. And so I went to the Peter Singer protest, and there was a huge amount of fundamentalist Christians there. And it was remarkable because there was a lot of anger between the people with disabilities and the Christians because so many people with disabilities had been mistreated. But at least their perception was that they had been treated by the Christians. And Diane was wonderful in getting the two groups, instead of being on opposite sides of the street, to come to the same side of the street and protest together. And I don't think without Diane there, I don't think we would have come together, even though we were protesting exactly the same thing.
Okay, this is Elaine again, and yes, I was there with the Peter Singer demonstration, and yes, it's been an awkward alliance, being in coalitions with people who condemn each other on some things and yet mutually support being against euthanasia and assisted suicide. And I've experienced this very personally because, you know, some of the fundamentalist Christians are awful to parts of me. And yet, we can work together on common ground sometimes. And that has made the difference in many situations.
But it's imperative that you have leadership that condones the working together, because if you don't have that, it's not going to happen.
I do understand, and I have personally had to resign from or have been kicked out of or shunned by more organizations than many people have ever belonged to. So I now have withdrawn from most organizations, and that means I'm on my own, but I don't have a boss. And that's a form of freedom. And Anita, I want you to know what an honor it was. And I am so thankful that I managed to rally enough focus to zoom in and sing at the event on the 11th.
I was honored that you were able to do it. And I was actually able to record your song on my computer. And I will get you that. I don't know how to mess uh, with that, but there are a couple of IT folks at CDR who do, and I'll get that. I'll get that to you.
I am so looking forward to it because I now have been recorded several different places, but don't myself have, even with my usual brain, the tech savvy to access them. And I have requested, but most people have not sent copies of recordings of me that they have. So I look forward to it because it was amazing. And I knew it was a hot day, but you were in the direct sun. I
I
don't
wound up getting heat exhaustion.
uh,
I got heat exhaustion that
oh
day.
yeah, of
I
course
almost
you
had to
did.
go to the hospital, but I managed. It was, whew, it was rough.
I was at home and I was having heat exhaustion. And we pulled it off.
Yeah.
And we did it in part with the energy of our ancestors, including Diane and a long list of others. And I encourage everyone to take the time to look up these things, this court case or these court cases that were announced are really, 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 really amazing.
we're starting to get press. Some of us, well, like the Chicago people, the Illinois people, and mostly in Chicago, got press that day. And so we've gotten some press. And yesterday, I went on the Katie Pavlich show, Matt and I, very briefly, but it was the first time that that I did an interview that didn't turn out to be propaganda for assisted suicide due to the weird editing and whatnot. Actually, Katie Pavlov called it grotesque. Wrong and grotesque were her words. So, we'll see. I am, continuing to give presentations in all. Wisconsin, the law is winding its way through, and so I've been asked to give a training in September around Wisconsin's, law. And so, I'm just, grateful to, it's like I feel like, hey, Diane, the work is continuing. And, we're keeping, that dream alive to, at the very least, stop the law from going into effect in our two states, but at the end, hopefully getting up to the Supreme Court of the United States, because, like, especially in New York, our cases is especially egregious, and our state senators and state assembly folks and the governor as well, because a lot of this came from they knew that access to healthcare and services were being cut, and they know that for some, people may feel they have no choice but to suicide. And so, definitely the work continues. I think Diane would be proud, so yeah.
This is Alice. I've got my hand up and you all may not be able to see it, but this was my question is for both of you, Anita and Elaine. The things that we talk about, Sharon and Susan and I, and when people come to our weekly planning meetings and come to events like this, is about preserving stories, collections. There was work on a national museum. There's still movement in that direction. There are people that are working to preserve history and open museum spaces. And so my question for both of you is how you plan to preserve, if you haven't thought about it yet, or if you need assistance with preserving. And that's certainly something that we've been talking about, coming up with some ideas in our meetings and with meetings with other people that are in the museum space, so that things don't get lost, whether they're artifacts, whether it's your music, Elaine, that I've been following your music off and on over the years. My introduction to Diane was when she was co-director of the Technology Access Center in Nashville with Bob Kibler. Sadly, both Diane and Bob are no longer with us. I was at the initial center in Berkeley, California that Apple took as the model for the centers. And we had 10 come in with us in 1987 under the name National Special Education Alliance. And we found out quickly that that really didn't say what we were doing. So before it disbanded in 2013, it was the Alliance for Technology Access. And it disbanded largely in part to the Tech Act coming in. Some of the centers were folded into the Tech Act, but that's where I first met Diane. And we always had like a sing along. There were some of us that were wannabe musicians. One of our members had played with John Hartford. So there were some people that knew what they were doing. I was just along for the singing. And even after she left that position, she went to Illinois at the center for one of the centers for independent living. And she was especially available to even someone who only knew her very limitedly, to try and get services in Illinois for my brother, who at that time did not have a clear diagnosis on the spectrum, but needed some assistance. And so she was always gracious and available to take a call or call me back. And so I'm getting all the feels from both of you talking about Diane and about the work that was done. And the other question that I have, besides archiving your important artifacts and work, is what do you see in terms of the disability community movement going forward? Are there young folks that are coming up, or is it just that because of the times things are so disjointed? Thanks for your answers.
Well, I think in my case, yeah, I probably need to get on that. I'm so, oh, it, yeah, it's like I figure, oh, what do I have worth, you know, um, I figure, oh, well, I don't have anything, or I don't have anything worth keeping, or what. I mean, I, I don't think that's true. That's probably my, I mean, I would think who would want my stuff? Um, if I had, I mean, I probably lost so much, but taking pictures and whatnot. I mean, as far as my personal stuff, oddly enough, I found a 30, almost 40-year-old photo album that wound itself up on NPR. I talk about this photo album, so pictures and whatnot of various actions. So, I mean, I would imagine that, I should probably stop thinking that my stuff is worthless or useless and gather it up. But I mean, as far as, yeah, so I mean, that archiving, I mean, as far as historical, I have my project that I've, um, gotten some funding from Borealis, and just literally today received the notice that they are the funding ended, 100,000 to 100,000, 50,000 for 2 years. That was in 2024. But I literally got a letter today saying that they're awarding me another $50,000.
Woohoo! Yay, yippee yahoo! Yay, yay, yay!
So, and my project is called We Were There Too, Blacks in the Disability Movement. because certainly in the case of Black folks in particular, um, with the media bias and all, and the whitewashing of history, our stories don't get told. And, the joke is there's those same 8 or 10 Black folks in the disability movement, that we may know of, like Claudia Gordon or Haben Girma or Tommy Lacey, who passed away, but it, it, there are certainly, folks who, um, were out there, in the trenches putting their lives on the line, whom we know nothing about. And so, my project focuses on uh, Black disabled, um, in disability history, and I've gotten some interest. Borealis is certainly committed to, um, working with me to get even further funding and support, because eventually what I want is for this to be a PBS docuseries about different people. When you have someone with a whole piece of legislation named for them, you don't know who they are, you know. And so that's what, I, working on. I mean, as far as folks, I mean, I consider myself an elder, even though I'm probably young. Um, there are people out there who've been doing this longer than me. I've only been doing this for like 35 years. So there's people out there that's been doing it longer than me and who will chafe at me referring to myself as elder, when on my next birthday, which is on the 27th of this month, I will only be 61. But I spent literally of my, I spent from age 16 on in social justice, social change, you know, um, and, in disability rights, lived through a lot of history, lived through a lot of disability history, you know, um, put my health and my life on the line, ruined my health, been arrested 140 times in 39 years. I think that I deserve the term elder. Now, I believe that there are young folks, out there. I believe that I'm really happy. When when I started, the whole concept of disability justice, that wasn't, it just wasn't happening. And you know, I still look at the situation of racism that exists in the disability community and in disability rights and whatnot. And I have lived through that and been the victim of that. I certainly tried to address that. It was my biggest failure. I'm, people weren't ready to hear about, dismantling systemic racism and, intersectional justice and all, but the the thing that's so wonderful about the young folks coming up is that, you know, they're bringing disability justice and they're doing, things in unique ways. And, I'm certainly staying ready to mentor, but also to get on out of the way, and let our young folks, do the thing, and so, um, there are, so many, and I'm also, glad that, lots of people who are neurodivergent, lots of people who are, you know, queer, LGBTQIAS2 plus, and all that we, are out there, that we, get the courage, especially in these times that we're living in. I think it's so important, and I tell young people not to be afraid. Um, that we we can't afford to be, afraid. Don't let fear hold you back. Because the goal really is for us, to be able to live our lives, right? That people don't ooh and ah when we come out the house, you know. Um, people don't, all of a sudden, treat you as if you are other than or lesser than because, you're disabled, or they figure out that you're disabled, and whatnot. And we have so many, wonderful, absolutely courageous, badass young folks out there who, are, who are taking up the mantle. Because, after a while, sometimes egos get involved, right? Especially when you've been doing things for a long time and whatnot, you know. And so, I'm, trying to, mentor, but then, like I said, to kind of step on the side because, the young folks, we got it. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, so Anita, you and I are such kindred spirits, and we have each and both struggled with focusing on and taking care of everyone else and many, many different causes while abandoning ourselves. Your work is precious. I am beginning to evolve also this traumatic brain injury has actually helped me to appreciate myself more, because one of the things that you and I share is we just don't give up. But we also don't tend to embrace ourselves. I'm getting better. Whoop-dee and do. Now, I have been trying to get my apartment is an archaeological dig.
Yeah, someone could just come and take the things off your walls and fill a museum.
Yes, I'm just saying. But Susan, I wanted to especially thank you because part of my personal evolution happened because you invited me to be part of the ADA 30 stuff.
It was the right time and the right place, and everything came together.
Well, and that was how and why I got a camera.
That's true.
I
I remember that. I remember, yes. Do you recall
I
that?
I hated at I was a performer. People applauded me a lot, but I did not feel I deserved the applause. And I did not like my own image. And Zooming with you helped me to evolve. So I thank you. And Anita, my goodness, I remember so many times when we were at the same demonstrations. And also Diane. I have a lot of that stuff in these boxes, unsorted, because I didn't value my own work. I'm getting better. And yes, I have actually made some arrangements to archive some of my material at libraries, but I need tech help to do it. And I can barely get around at all by myself. I have become much more disabled. I can't even ride the bus by myself anymore. Imagine that. And yet, it's still a blessing. And yes, we are elders. Only my rebirth day, and I put it in those terms, my rebirth day was September 30th, 1977. Some of you know that was the day that I was literally stabbed in the back. But I'm not dead yet.
That's
And
right.
I could not have become who I am except for that happening. And Anita, you astound me. I am so glad you got the money because I've been concerned about your survival, basic survival. Yay!
Well, this is for the project.
I
I still
understand.
need work. I
I
can't spend it
understand,
on
but
these.
honey, you could use some of it for yourself too. Come on, give me a break. You got to do that. You got to take care of yourself. If you don't survive, there's no project.
True.
Well,
I just need
hello.
to, I just need to supplement that. Um, Borealis is, looking at getting me, supports, for that. But, I'm not working right now. I'm literally living off of my speaking engagements. So more speaking engagements, please. Because that's how I don't get Social Security or anything like that. I had Medicaid for people with disabilities who work. I lost that, and all. So I tried to, and I don't qualify for SSI or anything like that, which is fine because I feel like I need to be able to um, make, enough so that I'm not mired in poverty. So if anyone knows of any speaking engagements that I can talk about disability history, and all, talk about, the project or this or that, send folks my way.
Anita Grover has put in the chat,
Yes.
Grover Hogan, that Lois Curtis's music and visual art can bring attention to disability archives of both of you. Might we collaborate? And Grover did a recent session for us about Lois Curtis. So I caught your your comment about if you don't know who has the laws named after them. That's part of what we're
Exactly.
trying to do. That's part of what we're trying to do
Mhm.
under the DHACC and the I Love You Lead On community, and um, bringing everybody
I had
together.
the honor of meeting Lois and going through. I have a bag of treasures in a box under my bed, and one of those is a letter. Lois got my address and sent me. That she drew me a picture when we first met, folded it up and gave it to me, and then she sent. So I've got a piece of mail from Lois among my treasures. So yes, would love to
Hello,
collaborate.
Anita. This is Grover.
Hi, Grover.
You, you've certainly um, said a great deal that is, very, very wrenching, and I, I think both of you, for instance, you mentioned Borealis. Borealis.
Yes,
Well, I've at least seen that name, and the reference to grant money. So. But anyway, I'm so pleased that you mentioned the drawing that Lois did of you. I would love to, to get to see it. A group of us are putting together a show of Lois's art. Uh, hopefully, over at Augusta University in Augusta, Georgia, on her birthday, which is July 14th. And I'm not saying that we have a great deal of her work. It's just that, the knowing the subject of her work, is adds a certain specialness about it. And what you're telling me that it's you had it under your bed with a letter,
it's
perhaps you
in the.
say.
I don't have the original picture, but I have the piece of mail that she sent me, and because I have so much stuff like
Yes.
memorabilia, artifacts, and what. I know I've lost a bunch of stuff. I have T-shirts that are like 30 and 40 years old,
Oh,
that I'm still wearing. I have, like I said, I just found that old 40-year-old photo album that found its way on WXXI, which is our local NPR station. And like I said, I got like a little box of different, stuff. And I know for a fact that I have that little envelope from Lois. I will
yes.
go and find it.
Well, it's wonderful to hear that. I was Lois' advocate, formally brought together through citizen advocacy here in Atlanta and DeKalb. And believe it or not, she came to my home, and my dining room was considered a studio. She had lots of friends, who who were pleased when she would come to their homes and do art. But the fact is, her letter writing. I mean, you have touched on probably the richest realm of Lois and her, communicating with the world. And I have a lot of them. But let me say this: it's actually a confession. Uh, and I think this is true of a lot of folks who knew Lois and were around her. She was constantly wanting to. She had all these addresses in her head, many of them, and so she was constantly. So lots of us ended up with, envelopes with letters in them, and we all wanted to check, the the address. But anyway, for whatever reason. So I think a number of the folks who were on Lois microboard do have a certain number of letters that uh, she would hand them to us and say, mail this. And of course, uh, well, I can make a lot of excuses that the fact that I still have some, but I also wanted to mention Elaine, uh, your your uh, your mentioning your music really sort of gets me enthusiastic because Lois, I don't know exactly when she started, but she was writing lyrics. And one of the last things she did when I went to visit her before she died, she dictated. She loved to dictate things, like letters, as though they were coming from her, but the individual, somebody else was doing the writing. But so I actually have five, what I call five songs that Lois dictated to me that I have attempted to set to music, even though I don't read or write music, other than with do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So I at least have a left and right hand, of the music. And I'm actually taking a composition classes at the Decatur Fine Arts Academy, which is across the street from where I live in Decatur. So anyway, I would like to, stay in touch, and while the presentations were going on, I was trying to Google, the songs that you mentioned, Elaine. But I certainly got material on you with a guitar, but I haven't actually located the music itself. But anyway, I'm going to continue that, and so I will end that which I'm saying now. But I thank you very much for. I like it when I listen, and there are lots of things that are sort of get the juices going. So anyway,
Mhm.
thank you very much.
If you Google my name, I'm pretty sure you'll find
Yes, I've already. Well, I
it
saw
was
that.
Anita. Anita, not even Elaine. I'm surprised what they have when I Google myself occasionally. I had to get a news outlet to, he wanted me to find some pictures, and I'm like, hey, I'm I'm almost totally blind. I have almost no sight.
Yeah.
Look, Google me and you'll find. And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, I am positive. I know occasionally I Google myself and I'm surprised at the stuff that I find. I didn't realize, you know how like actors, that IMBD thing, the Hollywood actors and stuff, have
Yes.
I have one of those because I worked with Nina G and Danny. Oh, I'm blanking his name. He played on doggone it. He played on Seinfeld. Why am I blanking his name? But you know, I worked with some Hollywood folks, you know, and doing some ADA, you know, celebrating ADA and things. And
Yeah.
in fact, the first one that I did, I introduced Elaine and her music.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and then the second one, you know, the second one that I was heavily involved in, you know, it told my journey, you know, how I used writing, you know, basically to save my life and
Yes.
kind of became a writer. So yeah, and my writing and things and everything are out there. So yeah, I was like, I didn't realize that I had this IMBD thing with the list of the stuff that I've done with these actors. So it was pretty
Your,
cool.
your filmography, huh? Your
I guess, and I'm not even, you know,
yeah.
I was like, wow. Sometimes I Google and I take pictures of the stuff that I
Yeah.
find on Google because sometimes when I go, you know, you can't find it or whatnot, but like the really intriguing stuff, I'll take pictures of.
I did the same. Yes. But anyway,
Elaine has asked Grover for you to email her, and her email is in the chat. It's elaine.kolb at
okay.
comcast.net. She also says, I lived around Atlanta from 1971 to 1988, moved to Connecticut after falling in love with Patty Deek. I hope I said that right, at a DAP demo in San Francisco in 1987. And she says her brain is fading, but she's not dead yet.
Well, Elaine, thank you for mentioning Atlanta and your email address. But those dates are, I started working at Emory and well, I became director of medical illustration in 72. And in 88, Emory was ready to fire me. So I took permanent leave of absence. They really wanted to get rid of me, you know, permanent leave of absence. Who ever heard of such things? Unfortunately, I did retire in 2003. So I didn't maintain my distinction of permanent leave of absence. But anyway, I may I ask what what kept you what kept you in Atlanta? What I mean, was it employment?
Oh, okay. I'm. Let me try to get focused.
Okay, sure.
I moved to Atlanta in 1971 from Buffalo, New York. I moved to Atlanta because things fell apart for me in Buffalo. And I met some women from Atlanta when I went to Cuba on the 3rd Venceremos Brigade in 1970. So I moved to Atlanta hoping for someone to help me. I was one of the founding mothers of the Atlanta Lesbian Feminist Alliance and lived at the Alpha House in Little Five Points. I did other things, and I was stabbed in the back in Atlanta, and it's a long story, but I have been militantly unemployed since then. Thankfully, I was employed full-time in Atlanta at the time I was stabbed, so I got better treatment than I would have at Grady Memorial Hospital. Many long stories. I started writing songs in 1971, and my songs have evolved with the different movements that I have been part of. But I have, and I graduated with honors from Georgia State University in 1980 and was awarded a Fulbright scholarship and went to Australia as part of the United Nations International Year of Disabled Persons in 1981. I felt led and guided to stay on the grassroots level and use all of what I had learned and joined ADAPT, and all of this is stuff that I have archived stuff about in my apartment as well as my head so far.
This is Alice. Wow, that's an amazing story. Both of you have amazing stories. We are a little over the top of the hour, and we are going to close out, but we can stay on the call. We're just going to stop the recording after Sharon shares a short fundraising video about how you can help. Once again, at the website iloveyouleadon.com and also at DonorBox.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to Deva's Room. Deva's Room is a virtual space open to all, seeking to bring anyone interested in disability studies together in conversation and in solidarity. Deva's Room is inspired by the life and legacy of Deva Kasnitz and her outstanding contributions to the field of disability studies. Deva's Room is volunteer-led by members of the Disability History and Culture Collective and the I Love You Lead On community. In a 2023 reflection, Deva wrote of her determination to be more comfortable in study and advocacy and to blend them together to create a diaspora of disability studies best ideas. By holding regular events led by prominent and emerging voices in disability studies, we hope to honor this mission. Deva believed in a fully inclusive world that respected everyone's communication strategies. Inclusive and accessible technology can be costly. You can help support technology expenses for Deva's Room, which will allow us to grow and expand. If you have the resources to contribute to the development and sustainability of Deva's Room, please consider donating by scanning the QR code on your screen or by visiting the link in the chat, donorbox.org/Deva-S-room. Thank you so much for showing up and learning together with us.
Help make this space accessible. I Love You Lead On community and all of its various projects are volunteer-led. We have a variety of ways you can support our efforts to provide full access. Our work includes the Disability History and Culture Collective, DHACC, this space, Deva's Room, Judy's Room, Justin's Room, and other events on the horizon. You can donate at iloveyou-leadon.com, donate. Anita is saying that her wife is home. She's got to go. Thank you so much. And we are so appreciative, Anita, of you and Elaine tonight. Next slide. Updated information and schedule and registration details. You can visit www.iloveyou-leadon.com. ILYLO are capitalized /Justin or bit.ly/Justin's-room, J&R capitalized. Past episodes will soon be available at the playlist on YouTube, bit.ly/Justin's Room playlist, J, R, and P are capitalized. I'm getting something on the screen. I'm not sure what that is. And we do have a feedback form about this event. We also have a QR code on the screen, https://bit.ly/ILYLO, all caps, -DHACC, all caps, event feedback, E and F are capitalized. Next slide. We have another event coming up next week on our last Wednesday of the month, which will be our third quarterly museum gathering where people from the museum space, people that are interested can come together. We're trying to bring people together who are doing all kinds of work, whether they're archiving or they have a museum or they're working on a museum. And we also have an upcoming event in July that we will send out information about for a screening of Life After a film and a discussion panel afterwards. You can find all of this on iloveyou-leadon.com on our website. And we thank everybody for tonight. We're going to go ahead and stop our recordings, and we can stay on for as long as people want to, or until we all have to go.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank you, Michelle.